Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with senior political correspondent David Drucker. And David, President Biden's approval ratings plummeting, these conversations that have been taking place in Washington and elsewhere about who might, replace him in 2024 if he doesn't run, have been getting louder. Polls show even Democrats don't want him to run again. So who else might Democrats be looking at?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Part of the problem that Joe Biden has, and he's not the first president to approach a midterm election with falling approval ratings, doubts about his leadership, sort of whispers about, well, will he run again? Would the party turn on him? But he's an interesting figure in this regard because he's 79 years old, almost 80 years old, or he's going to be 79 this year. Anyway, by the time he'd run for re-election, he'd be 82 years old, approaching 86 at the end of a second term. And so when you talk about Joe Biden as a president, a lot of people looked at him as a transitory figure, a transition figure, somebody who could, kind of be a bridge between the Trump era and some, from a Democratic point of view, some hopeful new progressive or just non-Trump era. So his support for him was always a mile wide and an inch deep, and there was always this understanding that he is kind of too old, in our opinion, to run for president. We really don't want a president, in his or her 80s, but he seems to be the most electable Democrat we have. He seems to be the most able to defeat Donald Trump, our most important task. And so they were willing to cut him some slack and make compromises. Now you're in a position where his approval ratings have fallen under 40%. And many Democrats believe that he's not meeting the moment, that he's not doing what is required, whether it's about overturning Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, whether it's about mass shootings and a desire on the left for stronger gun control legislation, all sorts of things. And so Democrats are saying to themselves, well, we always thought he might be too old, but he did his job. He beat Donald Trump. But really, do we want a Joe Biden who's just never going to have the spring in his step that a Joe Biden at 50 would have had, running in 2024 against what Democrats believe is a very vigorous and determined Republican machine? And so they're looking at governors. There's some of the progressive base looking at senators. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, a Massachusetts senator, still has a deep following, even though she shied away from suggesting another campaign is on tap. They're looking at Governor Gavin Newsom of California. He's running ads in Florida, going after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a possible Republican candidate in 2024 for the presidency. And Gavin Newsom has a lot of problems at home. Rising crime, a homelessness problem, like all sorts of quality of life issues. But Democrats who feel like Joe Biden has not provided the sufficient pushback and forward-leaning fight against Republicans in various areas, at least like that Gavin Newsom was taking it to the Republicans by running that ad in Florida, which is a very symbolic sort of move, but a way for him to show that he is fighting. And I think that's what Democrats are looking for, somebody they believe has youthful vigor and will fight.
You mentioned, obviously Gavin Newsom running that ad in Florida. What are some other ways that Democrats who maybe have presidential aspirations can start to position themselves to be the next standard bearer without, running afoul of Biden, who hasn't announced his intentions yet?
Well, look, there's actually a very easy way to do this, right? You declare your support for Joe Biden in 2024, say you have no interest in running, but you do the sorts of things that attract attention. That ad in Florida is a good example that Gavin Newsom is running. J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, running for re-election, is another Democrat that has caught the eye of some Democrats because they believe that he's fighting, that he's pushing back against Republicans. So you can be a national voice. You can provide an example in your state with how you govern, or with your vote in Congress. Showing how you would approach these issues if you were in charge, and where you are in charge, approaching issues that way with legislation, with executive orders, and you can use the bully pulpit that you have to provide what Democratic voters believe is missing without saying that's what you're doing. They will conclude that on their own, And meanwhile, all you say is, no, of course I support the president, I'm a big fan. And therefore, you can walk this tightrope, and everybody understands that at some point next year, Biden will make his decision. And no matter what he says, he will probably has not made the decision. He'll make his decision, and then everybody will go from there.
Well, David, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more reporting from David and the rest of the political team at washingtonexaminer.com.